Hey folks, welcome in. I hope you're doing well. inZOI recently had an Ask Me Anything that happened on their Discord last Friday at 1 UTC, whenever that is. I looked it up and converted it to my local time, and you best believe I was there on the dot. But when I tuned in, it turns out I was an entire day late. Thankfully, we have amazing folks in the likes of SugarZoi and Zoiverse who recorded and posted the whole thing to share. Some things were confirmed and some things we had guesses about were sort of made clear, but for logistics' sake, let me dot my I's and cross my T's with a bit of a preface because I know you love that stuff. You love looking at sources in the description, you're all about those timestamps, and you're all about making sure you have references to look back on. You're all about thinking analytically and not taking things too personally and not wearing a game as your entire personality. Sometimes the stuff you say in the comments scares me. Anyways, the questions that were off limits during their AMA were cordiality. They were very rude people. No, I'm kidding, of course. Have a look on screen. They said no asking about pricing because that's their own damn business. They said no roadmap questions because we just got here. And finally, language support because that's too hard to do. Again, I am joking. The real reasons these questions were off limits was because they'll be announced at another time. Now, with all that squared away, we're going to start with the line of questions that I'm going to be calling future planned content. One of the questions was asked, can we have pets? Yes, but also not yet. They state that they understand the importance of pets and how they themselves want it in inZOI. However, at this stage of development, it's simply not ready and they need more time. Animals are in the world and you can interact with them to some degree. We'll know more as early access drops, but for right now, it's not an immediate priority. Next, we had a question about active school systems. We were hoping for something similar to that of Sims 4 high school years, but not broken. The community was hoping for an elementary school, a middle school, and that they would work like active careers. The dev team stated that they are open to the idea and would love to start a project like that for the base game. However, there's tons of complexity that goes into it. For example, how would Zois handle bullies, or how would the teacher career path work in this, and other social structures to consider when making schools feel immersive and engaging. So right now that's out of their scope, but seeing how there's an emphasis on active careers, who knows? They simply didn't want to give a timeline on that. And again, this section has a lot of conceptual ideas and projects they would like to add, but as the nature of early access and development, things are still up in the air. Now here's a question about hospitals and the healthcare active careers. As we know, health plays a major role in the game, sickness can spread, and they plan to add more diseases and illnesses into the game to add more variety. So as you'd imagine, why not have an active career or building that revolves around hospitals? However, like active schools, they said they want it, it's complex to add in, they want to do it right, but they'll need time to do it. Now for controller support, it's on the way. With console release planned after full release, it's only a matter of time. As of now, there is no native support. So an interesting question came up as well. I didn't even know people wanted this, but someone asked, would we be able to build a city from scratch? And you best believe the answer is no. Okay. The answer is no. They mentioned to even design something like that would require a lot of work on their end, and cities are large and require a lot of data and optimization, and there's just a bunch of logistical hurdles. However, they did say, as technology gets better, who knows? At this point, it's outside the scope of their primary vision. That said, it's an interesting idea that if given time, they'd be eager to explore. Now on to swimming pools. Yeah, we had a swimming pool question, getting shades of Sims 4 here, but just so everyone's aware, it is an active development. It's in the works. They wanted it out for early access, but they just couldn't get it right in the way that they wanted in time. So resources were placed elsewhere. It's planned, it's just not here yet. Also, we might be getting memory systems in the game. So memory is not a feature in early access, but it is an active development. Right now, there's a recording system of significant events between two Zois, like marriage and divorce, and that will be the foundation of the memory system. Next, we had someone asking a question about the possibility of smart animals. Someone basically asked if the new AI functions for smart Zois could be used on animals. They said they plan to explore this feature and hopefully expand upon its functionality. In the case of smart animals, if that would be the case, they would love to see how animals react to the world around them. Much of this is just experimental ideas, but they're on board for a more living, breathing, active world. Also, they said they were in development of a mod tool called Wizards, I want to say it's called. Much of this conversation went over my head, but again, check out the full video for more details on that. But regardless to say, mod tools are on the way. Alright, now on a gameplay here, multitasking has been a popular request, especially after the last influencer test. Many people were hoping to see it in the game, and they understand why. And to clarify, multitasking refers to performing 2 actions at once, like eating and talking to someone. Right now, actions in inZOI happen 1 at a time. However, they explained that multitasking is still in development, so we'll see more on that later. Household size. So we'll be able to have a max of 8 Zois per household. Should you have a Zoi who's pregnant and that would possibly go over the max cap, the pregnancy will always fail. My question is, if our max is 8, how do we realistically make use of possibly 30-floor buildings or even apartments? Now, I'm not saying I'd love to play a massive household of an absurd number, that's not what I'm saying here, but my thinking is, what is the point of having so much space and build capacity if we can't have activity to make use of that space and build capacity? Perhaps we'll get more on that later as well. So someone actually asked about active careers and how they work, and I felt like this was pretty important to add because I feel like this whole philosophy that they're going about having active careers sort of speaks to their vision of inZOI more broadly. Someone asked, how does this differ from other life sim games when it comes to active careers? And they said, active careers, you go to your workplace, you do tasks, you build relationships with coworkers, you try and achieve promotions. All of this is done in real time. Some games, and they were very beat around the bush about it, use rabbit holes. Rabbit holes are a place where a character can disappear to, and then it's implied that an activity takes place, like going to work, but you never see them work, nor can you play them at work. It's interesting to see how much they did their best here not to say The Sims when describing a lot of similar features, or when they tried to draw comparisons and answer questions here. It was like the boogeyman in the room or Bloody Mary in the mirror. If you say The Sims 4 times, it'll reach out and grab you. They said that while rabbit holes serve a function to be less taxing on systems, that is a very clear visionary difference for them. When adding jobs, they want to make them feel like active careers. It's in the name. Perhaps that's why it'll take more time for them to add more job variety. They also mentioned there is no working from home because we live in a dystopia. I am kidding, not really, but it is weird because the devs did mention they themselves have time to work from home. They did say they made freelancer jobs, one specifically was the writing profession, so good old authorship coming in clutch. They did make it sound like there were more freelancer jobs, but they just didn't elaborate from there. Now, what can we do as a family? Family interactions are limited, but will be continued to be worked on. It is their top priority. They believe interactions you can do as a group is very important, and there's plenty to do as a single Zoi, but admittedly, family needs work. They're going to build upon this in early access, and as of now, there are some group activities, but it's limited. This next question was about sex. Did I just get demonetized? Quite frankly, I don't know what the question was, but here's how it was phrased. In inZOI, will you be able to have interactions that for the purpose of creating babies? At least that's the way they rephrased it. And I was like, what? Like hand holding? Look, apparently the goal for the team was to keep things PG for the sake of a wide viewer base, but I'm just like, how old are we that we can't have a mature conversation about this? I mean, I get it, I guess. There were presumably people of all age groups watching, but when you treat human sexuality like a bad word, you kind of indirectly make that word itself bad. So to answer the question, they said, inside the game, there's a feature in which you know exactly what is happening, but you have to imagine that it's not happening. I don't know why. I don't understand why this was so hard to answer, but I mean, you could have even used woohoo in this regard, or the word intercourse. Why not use the word intercourse? Is intercourse gonna get me demonetized? It's a scientific term. At any rate, I think the key takeaway there from that segment was that many countries and regions around the world have different rating systems, and that is kind of the crux of this issue. So yes, there's baby making in the game, but for whatever reason, the word itself is dangerous to say. They said their key demographic was not just an adult audience, but also a young audience, and for the most part, the visualization will be similar to the way The Sims handled it. What interactions can you do while pregnant? There's way more interactions than there were of previous builds. To name a few, they've added cravings to the pregnancy state. You can also now tell other Zois that you are pregnant. They can come over and congratulate you. You can have a baby shower. Ultimately, more will be worked on later. So for driving mechanics, they recognize how wonky the driving looks right now. They'll be working on this, and they wanted to turn out really, really well. So this is going to take some time, and they want to add more functionality to it. And while driving is not part of the core gameplay like GTA, they think it would be cool to add more customization and options to your car. It just so happened to have fallen down the priority list, so right now, their primary focus is simulating the city and the world around your Zoi. Apparently, facial tracking technology is patented. Like you can't, like if you do this certain tech, you have to like stay to iOS. I didn't even know that was a thing. But as of right now, there is no Android support, but they are looking for alternatives like using your webcam. So they added 3D printing in the game, and this will allow you to go wild when it comes to asset making. So all the objects in the game are pre-made by their art team. 3D printers allow you to use AI solutions that converts 2D images into workable 3D interactables. It does this by identifying the front of the image and then using their data learning technology that has been trained by their in-house database. It uses that knowledge to create the item into their game world. Before, these imported images would just act as objects in the world, but now you can assign tags with these objects. You can even use it to make objects that attach to your characters, like an attachable, like angel wings that some devs attach to their Zoi's back. Some folks on the team were even able to outfit their Zoi with a gun. This happened because Krafton are the publishers of PUBG, and their database includes Krafton assets, so it already recognized what the object should be by looking at the image, and it made a very detailed gun. The devs then made a soldier Zoi holding the gun. It doesn't shoot, the gun doesn't shoot, but it does demonstrate the breadth of the technology. So this next question was about your Zois wearing towels when entering the shower. I did find this question particularly interesting, as this sort of crosses perhaps not just the rating system, but cultural boundaries of what is acceptable for a game that is quasi-realistic. They've said simply censoring using blurred pixels is not enough to cover up what they find to be sexually suggestive. They've said Nikki characters that are more cartoony get a pass because of the idea that those character models are thematically cartoony. Again, saying the quiet part out loud there, they're talking about The Sims. And yeah, I mean, perhaps that is the true double standard there, but it really does show you the bind that they're in because they're determined to keep a family-friendly rating. And I'm curious if this will affect other areas of the game. One of the devs did mention that the final determining factor as to why censored pixels were off the table was due to a mirror bug where you'd see the entire body of the Zoi despite the censorship. They simply couldn't find a way around this in time for early access. Ultimately, they concede that it is immersion breaking. They realize that the towel is not the best solution, and they did ask chat for alternatives. Some folks mentioned bubbles, black squares, fog. They're open for more discussion on the topic. In the end, they want to make sure the game doesn't get seen as porn coded, I guess you could say. And on a side note, look, I read the comments. I know what some of you are eager to mod in. Look, what you do with your single player game ain't any of my beeswax.
I don't know nothing about that lifestyle. Whatever y'all got going on, because that's not me.
This next question was about murder, and yes, you can accidentally murder someone with another Zoi. As we know now, there's plenty of ways your Zois can die through starvation, anger, fire, etc. But making another Zoi kill is a different story. One thing you can do is start a fire at another Zoi's house, like accidentally dropping a match, they said. I guess you would have to think outside the box in order to make that work. Alright, so let's talk about character customization. One of the questions that was asked was about Zoi's height and whether we can customize that in the character creation studio. And the answer to that question is no. Stop asking. So height is a feature that many people want, and they can't provide it at this point. Individual height adjustments are just not possible. This all comes down from the practical side of things and how they're developing their animation and rigging their character models. Did I use that word right? Rigging, I mean. As it stands right now, male Zois are slightly taller than female Zois, a design choice they felt would most closely resemble reality, which I gotta say, where are my short kings at? This is outrageous. We need to gather at our nearest South Korean embassy and protest. I'm thinking, fellas, 5'6" and under, get in my cloud car and we're going. And you know what? There is no need to make this male focused. Ladies, tall women, put us in your pockets or wear us as backpacks because they've made this personal.
What?
That said, at this time, they've designed male and female characters in such a way that adjustable height would incorrectly display animations they already have in the game. For this example, they used handshakes between two Zois. Zois with significantly different heights would incorrectly display their handshake animation, which is kind of hard to argue because whenever I do handshakes with anyone taller than me, my entire body is thrown up and down. They're all aware of the disappointment people may have about not being able to adjust height, but that's something that'll have to be shelved for another time. To finish this part up, they also said you can now make bigger bodied and thinner bodied persons, although admittedly, there might be some clipping or what they called pixel spilling. This will be continually worked on. Additionally, we have an important announcement when it comes to hairstyles. Now, this was 100% community feedback driven, and because of that, we have more hairstyles, specifically Afro hairstyles. They worked really hard on this and they believe it looks really good and they're excited for us to use them. One of the unique challenges they faced was just how much work it was was to make good quality curls to the hair and have it look right on your character. They also mentioned that it required a lot of data to process, and they added extra textures and material assets to the game because of the complexity of the structure. But they wanted to do right by their community and put in the extra work needed to get this right. There was also a question about tattoos. Now, there isn't too much variety right now in early access. However, they did mention there are some piercings and facial tattoos. All of this will be worked on throughout development. One cool thing they said though was that you can import an image, like if you were at an actual tattoo salon and your tattoo artist actually made like a PDF version of your tattoo, you can take that image, upload it to inZOI, and use that tattoo on your character, which I thought was pretty cool. And there you have it. The AMA that dropped way too long ago at this point for this video to be relevant. Okay, so I want to thank you all so much for watching. I do appreciate that, and I appreciate you, and I hope to see you in the next video, whatever the next video may be. So until then, I will see you then. Bye for now. At any rate, this is old news. by. Oh man. Hey, it's better to watch this than a 2-hour video, right? Maybe not? I don't know. At any rate, thank you for being here, and I do hope to see you in the next video. I already did the outro. What are we doing? What are we doing? Anyway, that was a random tangent. Bye-bye.